Next, we have Brother Nilesh Patel from the USA. Brother Nilesh has a bachelor's and a master's in computer science and has worked in various positions in the IT field. He has been involved as a devotee since the mid 80s and has been actively involved in SSSIO activities since the early 90s. He has been involved in the international organizations since at least the early 2000s and is currently serving as a member of the SSSIO IT Committee and a director of the Sri Sathya Sai World Foundation. Can we please welcome Brother Nilesh Patel to the stage?
Saram, I offer my most humble pranams at the feet of our beloved Lord Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. Revered elders, dear brothers and sisters, I'd like to share a little bit of a story of my younger years when I first came to Swami. And this, I don't see too many young adults, but this may be a little bit more applicable to the young adults. So on the onset, I'd like to also thank the organizers of this conference. Mr. Kipchoge beautifully said, organizing a conference is like a tree. What you see on the top is this thing, but the root system goes down so much, so deep. And I know how difficult, having been involved in some of these conferences, it is to organize something of this scale. And, Brother Samba Shivarao Garu, I commend you for all the wonderful work you've done. It really is, to do something of this scale, the amount of work is an amazing amount of work it takes. So Swami tells us frequently, tell me your company and I'll tell you who you are. And during his discourses in 1973, during the summer showers, Swami elaborated on Bhaja Govindam. And in one of those is the famous poem by Shankaracharya on what is satsang, that good company. And also during that, as he was elaborating on this, he said something, and I'll just read this. In general, it is not possible to transform anything without external help. So there has to be an external association to have this transformation. And so one of the transforming moments in my life was when I was a young adult. Our family had come to Swami in the mid 80s, and in 1985 was the first time we went to see Swami. And then 2 years later, I had this desire that I wanted to go and have Swami's darshan. And it wasn't that I wanted to go with the family. I wanted to go alone. Being an 18-year-old, I didn't really want the family to come along with me. I wanted to go alone and kind of explore my own way. So I had convinced my parents to let me go, and so they weren't that difficult to convince. So I planned my trip to India. I went to, but on my way to Patti, the deal was I was supposed to spend a few days with my grandparents, and then I could go to, and they would arrange my trip to Patti. Well, my grandparents were not very fond of me going alone to Puttaparthi. They were trying to put every single obstacle possible to make sure I didn't go to Puttaparthi, because for them, Swami was something that was not familiar to them yet. And this young 18-year-old boy heading off to Puttaparthi was not something that they wanted to do. But after some convincing, they finally let me go with the condition I take my grandmother with me. So she was my chaperone. It turned out to be I was more her chaperone, but that's a different story altogether. And so once I arrived in Patti, it turned out that a group from our center back home, the Hollywood Center, was already there. And I was unaware of this. They invited me into this group. And shortly afterwards, we were called in for an interview. And it happened to be I was the youngest member of that group. And Swami spent a fair amount of time, probably seeing this person needs some help along the way, advising me, telling me certain things. And one of the things he said to me was, you have no good friends. And, I'm thinking, he says, all your friends are bad. And so then I paused and I thought, I was just mentally thinking, all my friends? And then Swami, just reading my mind, obviously, he says, all your friends are bad. So at that point in time, I go, I stepped back, and then he says, as long as, and many of us have heard this, as long as there's money in the pocket, and he said, as long as the father has money in the pocket, position, everyone will say hello. Once all that is gone, no one will say goodbye. And then he advised me that, the next thing he said was, your only friend is God. So at that point in time, uh, I took that very seriously, that my only friend is God. So when I went back, I proceeded to, at the college I was at, it was my first semester I had finished, and I had developed some friends with, because this is a new environment for me, so I had developed some friends over there, and I proceeded to avoid every single one of them. Many of them probably didn't know what happened and where I disappeared to, because I was hanging out with them, so to speak, and I ended up no longer. I would avoid all the locations where they would be, and that was, and a year later I ran into one of them, and they said, oh, we thought you transferred out of the school. And the reason this was such a transformative experience is, at that time, I didn't realize, I don't think I necessarily 100% realized what the consequences of that company would have been. And it was only much later I could see that what Swami had told me had a really, really amazing impact, because that particular path that I would have taken if I was associating with them was going to lead me down a very different path than, being with Swami. And so I think it's very important, and this is one of the reasons why events like this are so beautiful, is we're in good company. And this company is very, very important to our spiritual progress. So I have 3 minutes left, so I wasn't sure how much I'm going to be able to share. Um, so Brother Harish shared his experience of, getting kicked off, or getting kicked off the veranda the other day, and so I'll share mine. This was sometime in the mid '90s. We had we had an interview, and my dad had mentioned, because he was sitting on the veranda, if I could sit on the veranda, and so Swami agreed and said yes. Well, it just happened to be that that day was our last day. We were leaving. So right after darshan, after the interview, we literally got into the taxi and left. So the next year when I came back, Swami had said I could sit on the veranda. So I went in, sat on the veranda. At that time, the gentleman that was in charge, Mr. Srinivas Luxon, asked me, "Who are you?" And and then my dad explains, what all this, and he was not having any of it. He didn't know any why, and so he sends me back. Up until that time, because my dad was sitting on the veranda, I was sitting in this special seating. Well, it turns out the person who was in charge of this special seating said, no, you can't even sit there either. So he goes, go back into the regular darshan line. So at that point in time, my mom was really concerned, because they were sitting in special darshan. My dad was sitting in veranda, and I was sitting, and we're wondering why. And I said, don't do anything. This is Swami's will. We have to accept what Swami wants. So I went ahead and, I just said, don't try to contact anybody in the ashram. Don't try to use influence to get me to sit anywhere. That particular visit, every single day in the token lines, I never sat any further back than the second row. Almost every day, I got at least Swami would look at me. Many times I would get Pad Namaskar. I would go back to the room, and the natural thing is, oh, what happened? How was darshan? And then my sister and mom, who were sitting in the special seating, would say, oh, we were back in the third and fourth. Swami didn't look at us. He didn't even turn to us. And what I took away from that experience is when we sincerely accept Swami's will, Swami does some amazing things for us. He, he will do whatever you want. He will shower his grace on you. It wasn't that I did anything special. There were so many other devotees, but I accepted that this is what Swami wanted for me. And that acceptance really, really made all the difference. Now, I know at other times I've had where I thought I was something special, and I know how it feels to be way back, and every single day in darshan line, you end up in the back row. And so I know this wasn't a coincidence. This was Swami acknowledging that, yes, you did do the right thing by accepting what Swami wanted for you. With those few remarks, I conclude, and Sairam.